in resentment. And this is what one of the disciples did. I believe another writer identifies this particular person as being Peter. So we react on Friday, and then sometimes immediately resentment sets in. How could this happen to me? I mean, I know it happens to other people, but why me? This kind of thing is not supposed to happen to me. I'm saved. I walk right before the Lord. This kind of thing, and you know what? If we're truthful, we'll never admit it, but in the back of our minds, that resentment not only extends to human beings, but we actually begin to extend a little bit of that resentment to God. Now, we would never say that because we're saved, and we love the Lord, but sometimes when seemingly unmeaningful or things that should not happen to us, bad things, horrific things, unspeakable things happen to us. When we lose the things that we love, the things that we value, the people that we love, the people that we value, sometimes we get angry with God. Does that make sense? I know nobody want to admit to that today, but it happens. We get angry with God sometimes. We absolutely do. Now then, if you would look further in chapter 22, verse 54 through 60, I'm going to give you this other R thing that happens on Friday. Verse 54. Then took they him and led him and brought him into the high priest's house. And Peter followed afar off. You know Peter was the guy who said, I'm going to be with you. Lord, if everybody else leave you, I got your back. I'm your dog. I'm with you. I'm going to go to prison. I'm going to go to the cross. I'll do whatever. That's what Peter was saying, right? And when they had kindled a fire in the midst of the hall and were down together, Peter sat down among them, but a certain maid beheld him as he sat by the fire and earnestly looked upon him and said, this man was also with him. Now this is like, you got to see this picture. She checking him out. I know him. He looked familiar. Girl, he looked familiar. Don't you? You was with him. Verse 57, and he denied him, saying, woman, I know him not. Now the same one who said, dog, I'm going to be with you. Man, if everybody else leave you, I'm going to be. Then I'm going to tell you right now, there's only one who will never leave you nor forsake you. Everybody else, it just depends on how much pressure is applied. And after a little while, verse 58, another saw him and said, thou art also of them. And Peter said, man, I am not. Quit lying on me. Don't tell me I'm with them people when I don't even know them people. You got to put a little popka into that. Right? I don't know them people. Make me sick talking junk about me. And you got to feel it. You got to see that this is what's going on here, all right? Verse 59, and about the space of 1 hour after another confidently affirmed, saying, of a truth this fellow was with them, for he is a Galilean. And Peter said, man, I know not what thou sayest. And immediately while he spake, the cock crowed. Now you know the significance of that, right? And the Lord turned and looked upon Peter, and Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he said unto him, before the cock crow thou shalt deny me thrice. And Peter went out and wept bitterly. Now here's the third R that happens on Friday is regret. And this is true especially, folks, when it comes to relationships and people that were in our lives, relatives, fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, people that we've taken for granted, people that we are not on the best of terms with, but we assumed, we had the audacity to assume that we would all to get it straight, to have that last conversation, to straighten out the kinks in the relationship. We assumed. And then when we got the news that that person was no longer with us, then we were struck by the sense that we should have. The couldas and the wouldas and the shouldas. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. That's what happens on Friday. We react. Sometimes we become resentful. And we finish off the day thinking about the fact that we had some business undone with that person. Does that make sense? So now then, let's move on to Saturday. And I will back up in chapter 22 and read verse 31 and through 34. And the Lord said, Simon, behold, now this is the Last Supper. You all know that, right? Simon, the Lord said, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you. Now that's, that statement right there, it can be the basis of 2 Bible studies. The fact of the matter is that there are times when the devil targets us. And his purpose is to just take us out. And Jesus was telling Peter, because sometimes we think we're more spiritual than we actually are. We think we're more saved, more powerful, more committed, more prayed up, more anointed, more whatever than what we actually are. And the Lord said, Simon, he's desired to have you that he may do what? Sift you. That means twist you inside out. But I have prayed for thee. And I'm glad when Jesus prays. Aren't you glad about it? Because I think that when Jesus when he prayed, he probably get a prayer through. Yes, I know he can get a prayer through. That thy faith faileth not, and when thou art converted, strengthening thy brethren. Now, so I'm coming to another R word that happens on Saturdays, and that is a big word. It's regression. So we regress, we get off course, we move. Peter and many of the disciples, they left and they denied that they knew who Jesus was, and there was a reason for that, right? Simply because they were afraid for their lives. Sometimes we go back to the old stuff because we've gone through a crisis. And the old stuff is comfortable and it's familiar. Does that make sense? And it's so tempting. And by the way, remember that second R that we talked about on Friday, which is resentment. We believe in our minds that because God has done us wrong, that we have a justification on Saturday to regress. And Jesus said to Peter, I know that you're going to do this, but when you get yourself together. That's what he told him. He said, Peter, I'm not trying to hear all this stuff about you got my back. I know you're going to crumble. You're going to fold like a house of cards. But it's all right when you get yourself together. The Bible says that a righteous man falls 7 times, but he gets back up. So really the measure of whether a person is righteous or not is not how many times